and Stefan are these two really eccentric Dracula 1 and 2 creepy vampires that we meet in Breaking Dawn Part 2, and they're really excited about taking down the Volturi, and they do particularly hate Jane and Alec. It's a whole story. They're extremely old. They were born sometime before 1000 BC, and their date and source of transformation is unknown. They are the two only surviving members of the Romanian coven. They were part of the 12 ruling members, and the Romanian coven actually dominated the vampire world for like 1,000 years before the Volturi overthrew them between 400 and 500 AD. This, in a nutshell, is why they hate the Volturi so much, and the Volturi actually stole and copied a lot of their practices. Interestingly, Little Resentment is actually fascinated with them, and of course she is. Like, of course Renasbury would be intrigued by the evil overlords, her mentors. But Vladimir and Stefan also have the petrification that some of the Volturi has, which is like the translucent papery skin, and they explain to Little Radish that it's from sitting still for a long time when they were in power. But they do have clear eyes, unlike the Volturi, and they say the Volturi has dusty scum over their eyes, and they think they're like superior for not having that. Basically what happened was, during their rule that lasted like 1,000 years, they lived very brazenly and decadently. They were known and feared for thousands of miles in every direction. They lived like royalty. They had a stationary home. They had castles, which is where the Volturi gets the idea for Volterra and having a home like that. They often had their food rounded up and brought to them instead of hunting, which the Volturi also does. And importantly, they had a guard-like entity of other vampires to separate them from the ruling members, to like protect them, which is where the Volturi gets the idea for the Volturi guard. And they also obviously had vampire and human slaves. And during this time, vampires were like common knowledge to humans. They were their beautiful demon overlords, and they would occasionally make plans to like overtake them, but obviously they didn't stand a chance, and it just ended up being like easy feast for the Romanians. Remember, the Volturi's whole thing when they were trying to rise to power was keeping vampires quiet, right? Being inconspicuous and being invisible to humans. The Romanian coven, before even the Volturi did, had a guard, but their downfall was that they focused on brute strength. None of the ruling members had special talents, so they didn't think to collect vampires with special talents, but that's obviously what Aro did, right? And that is ultimately how the Volturi ended up overthrowing them. So Stefan's mate was actually taken out during the original war, but there were still some surviving members, and then over the years they tried to amass power and get more people and stuff like that, and they really thought that they were going to be able to take down the Volturi. But by this time, Aro had already acquired Jane and Alec, and they were just decimated, and the only two who survived were Vladimir and Stefan, because they were planning to spring a trap for when the Volturi retreated, which obviously didn't happen. That's why they're so vengeful, and why they particularly hate Jane and Alec and call them the witch twins, and why they're always looking for ways to damage the Volturi. That's why they don't like the Italian scum, and why little Racklebob really likes them. I guess she just like admires their technique.